Greet your neighbors. Today's invocation will be offered by Frank Relly.
Let us pray. We thank you for the many blessings and for this energetic club that believes in the service above self. We're thankful for the food, the hands that prepared it, and the fellowship. Our Rotarian four-way test begins with, of the things we think, say, or do, and I guess with the growth of electronic communication, we should also stick in there texting and emailing and chatting and whatever. But of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And finally, fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? In a time of nearly instantaneous and often targeted mass media, it becomes increasingly challenging to define absolute truths, fairness, goodwill. Even friendships are being disrupted with colors like red, blue, black, yellow, and the green of greed. At a keystroke, or a push of a button, the news brings us the slaughter of humanity in the Ukraine and other parts of the world. And at home, we become increasingly desensitized to daily acts of hatred and power. And with all that same keystroke, we still see people helping each other. And many of them are Rotarians. Help us continue to do good deeds in our community and the world. Help us to continue to find ways to reach out even further with greater impact. Dear God, thank you for your guidance. Thank you for the four-way test and your love. Amen.
Well, welcome to everyone. It's great to see you all today. Winter seems to be back a little bit. I'm sure we were all ready for spring. Well, this week's museum item is on the screen. I don't know how many of you have ever seen these. This is what we call a man in service flag that was used in both World War I and World War II. Each family was entitled to hang a small man in service flag in a window to signify they had a family member in the service. The flag was about a foot long and was hung vertically. The blue star was covered with a gold star if a family member died in action. This flag you see on the screen was from the Ward family, who had 2 gold and 1 blue stars, signifying that 2 family members were killed in action and a third was still serving. The former Army Reserve Center on Portage Road was named after the 2 Ward brothers. Now, Courtney is filling in for Secretary Lynn. She will do the Secretary's report.
All right, I gotta be honest. I'm more nervous about this than becoming president, all right? Following Lynn's shoes is pretty hard to do. And I felt very confident after my PETS training that I had this weekend, which is, if you don't know, your president-elect training. So I felt very confident. Then Lynn emailed me this morning. I was like, oh, sweet Jesus, it all went down. So with that being said, we are going to welcome our new member, Amy Heller, which is from the Buckeye Council, and she was sponsored by Tom Hilt. So President Gregg will be handing her her pledge today. So welcome. All right, and we have Lynette Matson with our traveling microphone, but we're going to start with Ron Amstutz and his guest. He has with us.
I have 3 guests that are standing, hopefully. My 2 fellow county commissioners, John Hofstetter, Sue Smale, and another guest that I'll talk a little bit more about when I'm commenting to you, Adam Signey.
All right, since you're standing right there, we're going to start with Mary Beth Burns and her guest.
My guest today is Jen Piper from the County Planning Department.
Marty Starkey.
My guest today is Rob Wells, Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Over here to Mike Miller.
My guest today is Dr. Nick Todd.
And then we'll finish up with Chris Boone.
Thank you. My guest today is Dr. Katie Michael, who is the Associate Dean and Director of Worcester Campus, Ohio State University.
All right, welcome everyone. We do have a couple announcements from the podium. We have Tom Rumbaugh and Becky Foster, if they can come on up. And then as they're coming up, we just wanted to remind you about the RSVPing for the Lowry Center that's going to happen next week. So if you want to see Lynn at the end or shoot her email, but if we can get those numbers in as quickly as possible, that would help the staff over there. Thank you.
Okay, so this is my month to transport our wonderful exchange students from school to the meetings. So I got to know them a little bit. And Azumi is on the baseball team with my grandson. And so these guys have to sell 30 gold cards at $10 each. Now, my grandsons are already sold. We need to sell Azumi's today. We sold 3 at our table. They're $10 each. He needs to sell 27 more of these cards, and they're good. They're good for a whole year, and they have some fabulous restaurants and stuff on here. So at the end of Rotary, he'll be standing back there, and hopefully you guys will be generous and help him do his commitment of 30 cards. That's fun.
Oh, well.
I just wanted to remind everyone that flag maintenance is continuing. The next session is coming up this Wednesday, March 15th, from 4 to 6. You can sign up online or just show up. I'm sure we'll find some room and flags for you. Thanks.
Well, Courtney's been at the microphone once and she already has more laughs than I did the whole year. It's all right. Would Dylan Kaufman please come forward for his classification talk?
So one of the first things my mom told me when I started going out on dates is not to have chicken wings or ribs when I was going out. And of course, we have ribs today when I'm about to present. So I'm not very neat. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dylan Kaufman. In this picture, you can see that's my wife, Jackie, and our dog, Wiggins, at Niagara Falls. Enter next, there we go. Some of my basketball career, I went to Highland High School. We won 2 state championships in 2011 and 2012. There's me with my grandparents who supported me along the way. Then I went to the University of Findlay, where I majored in marketing and finance. On the left is me and my roommates, and then on the right is me and my family. Some hobbies, we like to go boating. We go to Dale Hollow every year. And then love Browns games. I got season tickets this year, so I'm super pumped. And a lot of hiking, camping, and whatever outdoors that you can do. And then hobbies continued. I got into some triathlons and fell in love with that. So if the weather's nice, I'm out there running, biking, or swimming. And on the far left, if it plays sound, is one of the best things you can hear as an Ironman. That's me in the background, and the guy announcing says, "Dylan, you are an Ironman." And he no longer does that. That was one of his last races that he did that for, so that was super cool. Currently the cross-country coach at Highlands with my wife. I know nothing about running. I play basketball, but she develops all the workouts, and I just run with the kids for fun. Like I said, my wife Jackie, we recently got married last April, and the reason it says business is because we purchased that building in Millersburg. Used to be the Young Music and Sound Building. We're going through renovations on the right. It was our wedding. It wasn't completely finished. We didn't have AC or heat. And in April, we were rolling the dice both directions, and it ended up being 90 degrees and the windows wouldn't open. So people were just sweating like crazy, but it made for a memorable experience. So if anyone has any events in 2024, you can reach out, AmericanHallVenue.com. And then my professional career, I've been in commercial banking for 5 years, most recently here in Worcester with Westfield Community Bank since December. I'm loving it and loving the reception that I'm receiving from people from the Worcester area. Being from Holmes County, I'm trying to get to know a lot more people up here in Wayne County. So I'm super excited to meet everyone, and thank you for allowing me to be part of Rotary.
Very good, Dylan. Thank you. Welcome to Worcester Rotary Club. We've had so many new members that we have one of these scheduled for every meeting now through May, and which is a good problem to have. Now, we won't do one next week. Of course, we'll be at the College of Worcester, but we'll have one every other meeting. So welcome to our guests. It's a nice crew today. It's always great to see Azumi and Suji, our two exchange students. You've got Sue and Jonathan and Adam and Rob and Andy and Jennifer and Nick, which is fantastic. We love having guests, and we hope all of you can bring a guest anytime you want. So today's speaker will be introduced by Lynn Mumon.
Thank you, President Greg. Fellow Rotarian Ron Amstutz has been a Wayne County Commissioner for 6 years and is also serving on the Board of Trustees of the County Commissioners Association of Ohio. Prior to that, he served 36 years in the Ohio House and Senate, including 2 years as Speaker Pro Tem in the Ohio House. In recent years, Commissioner Amstutz has focused on strengthening our county's criminal justice system, which we will hear more about today. Prior to his public service, Ron worked as a writer, photographer, and bureau editor for the Daily Record. Ron grew up on a dairy farm in rural Wayne County. He is a graduate of Central Christian High School and holds a BA degree in government communications from Capital University. He is a 40-year member of Rotary. He was in Orville's Rotary Club for 10 years prior to joining Worcester, and his classification is still newspaper publishing. So, Ron and his wife Joanne are members of Worcester Grace Church. They have 2 grown children and 3 grandchildren. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Lynn. It's nice to grow old in Rotary with some of the rest of you. And I do thank you for the opportunity to come for you today to give you an update on some of the things going on in your county government. This report's going to primarily focus on the perspective that we have as commissioners, but I do want to put it into a context of some of the other elected officials that we work with. Let's see if I can figure out space bar. Yeah, that'll work. So does the backspace. All right. There are 16 elected officials at the county level, and we're 3 of them. We have roles that interact. One of our responsibilities as commissioners is to work with these officials to manage their funds and their finances. We also have the duty to provide buildings and grounds for all these elected officials and the services that they provide. The commissioners do have administrative duties as well. And I'm listing those here, but I'm not going to read through them. But we have a variety of teams that report to the commissioners, and I'm going to bring up some of those in the course of discussing what's going on these days. But that doesn't end our interrelationships. We have many organizations that we're involved with. I'm, again, not going to read through this. This isn't even an extensive list of everything, but some of these things are going to pop up too as well. We sit on some of these organizations, or we appoint to the organizations, and in other cases, we help support them with financing. So there's a lot going on and a lot of interactive things that make our county government what it is. So I want to go forward here now and actually put 3 words up there. If you think of what we do in the county through 3 lenses, preserve, revitalize, and develop, you begin to get a sense for how we're positioned and what's going on. And I'm going to use this as part of what I explained to you in the current situation. We can think of one category of these areas as assets. One of those assets is a set of tools, which I'll talk about in a bit, but you can't really have effective tools to do things unless you have teams that develop and deploy those tools. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those next. The first group I think of is actually our workforce at large. It's really made up of many, many teams, and most of us are actually on more than one team ourselves. And you know, we know very well, we're all very aware of the mismatch going on in our workforce between supply and demand. It's a real serious issue. But I think of the workforce as more than just people that are on a payroll. I also think of things like volunteers. That's what a big part of what makes our community a thriving community. And actually, our rotary 4-way test that was prayed for is a good example where we talk about service above self. That somewhat relates to service within our occupation, but it's also emphasizing the value of volunteering beyond that in our communities. And that's whether our rotary hat's on or we're doing volunteerism in another way. So another volunteer team, and it's kind of volunteer, it's very valuable. It's our Wayne Economic Development Council, the WEDC. Our county's method of promoting a thriving economy was chosen actually decades ago. And it's the collaborative approach. There's 4 options, and that's the one that was chosen. I think it was a wise choice. It's really become the organization that we can all point to with pride and say, the WEDC is our front office for economic development. The mayor made a reference to this extensively in his presentation on the state of the city here a couple of weeks ago, and as well it should. We have in our community been riding a very high wave of economic success relative to the rest of our nation, and I'll touch on that some more going forward. Our planning department, with our director here, thank you for bringing Jen along, Mary Beth, those 2 and their teams work together a lot on what we were doing to try to make this a better place for our county. Environmental services is another aspect of this whole picture. We have the Community Improvement Corporation at the county level that it has become more active as a catalyst as well for economic development. And the Red Cross building was recently gifted to the county, and it's this year being refitted for the health department to move into, which will open up that building that the county owns. And it's possible that the CIC may be able to be used as a vehicle to transition that building to whatever it might be used for next. And there's another building in that area that might also go through a transition because Local Roots that's renting from the county now is looking to purchase the Ride-On building and move over there going forward. So here's another major asset, farmland. Some of us were really surprised last year to learn from a nationally recognized specialist who came to visit here in Wayne County, and they informed us that we not only have 79% of our county still in farmland, but 81% of that farmland is considered nationally significant. That's rare. We have a soil asset that far exceeds the norm of farmland in other rural areas across the Fruited Plains. but we do have our challenges. We've been leaking prime farmland. In the last 5 years, we've lost 20,000 acres to development, primarily low-density residential development. And you can see here again, the tension between preserving farmland assets on the one hand and the need to give residential and commercial enterprises places to flourish. I'm going to mention a couple of efforts that we're employing to try to address that. Now, here's some tools. I'm going to list a few of these quickly. Wayne Onward is the title we gave to our community, our comprehensive plan for the county. We went through an extensive public process to develop that plan a few years ago and adopt it. It's our vision for land use. And one of the projects it calls for is reworking our subdivision standards. And that was actually done by an action late last year when we adopted revisions to our subdivision plans. We're hoping that these changes will help slow rural development and focus growth in the municipalities where there is more efficient use of land. But this does remain a work in progress. We'll see how the market adapts to what we've done here with these changes. Okay, I got a little ahead of myself there. We have enterprise zone tax incentives that we've been using for years. We've also recently created a transportation improvement district, TID, which has been successful in attracting some grant funding. An example would be the connection of Daisy Way to Old Airport Road and here in Worcester. Had some financing to help with that. Dalton was able to install a CRA, Community Reinvestment Area, for their downtown recently in an effort to help promote renovation and revitalization there. The WEDC and the CIC helped with that project, and now that template is being looked at by several other villages here in the county as a possibility to help them upgrade their building structures. We're also exploring possible use of a TIF, tax increment financing, as a tool to help promote revitalization and development. I'm going to talk about the land bank here in just a bit, but before I do that, I want to talk a little bit more about ASAs and what in the world is an ASA. Well, it's an ag security area, and we have a number of these in our county. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner of this, the largest one, which is up in the northeast corner of the county. There's two other ones that lie between Worcester and Smithville, and they really butt up against both their corporate boundaries. So that's an important tool that it's a voluntary tool that the landowners can adopt, and it gives them some tax incentives for installing improvements, vertical construction or systems that they get some tax incentive to, and it gives them a 10-year window of setting aside their farmland from other kinds of development, which is also a renewable 10-year period. All right, let's talk about transportation a bit. That infrastructure is an important asset. We have about 500 miles of county highways, and that doesn't count a lot of what we have in federal, state, and local streets and roads. Very important part. Public transit has been a recent pilot that we've been running where partnering with SARTA over in Stark County, it's again surprising how much that's grown. A lot of rides to work are happening with, it started with hundreds of rides per month, now over 1,000 rides per month. And we're looking at possibly reworking that model to make it more efficient and more sustainable. In our airport, we're working on a 10-year plan that's looking for forward 10 years for ways to strengthen and grow that very important part of our county's economy. So those are some of those things that we think are helpful. Here's another one. Again, we recently started, I think it was in mid-2020, a Wayne County Land Reutilization Corporation. We usually call it the Land Bank. This was an idea that Worcester promoted, and it's been showing success. 7 properties have been acquired, and we're seeing a variety of positive improvements. Essentially, we're taking land that is not paying taxes or is underwater and working them into productive tax-paying status. For example, in Orville, the old Manhattan restaurant sadly could not be restored, so it was demolished and it's a vacant lot now, but it's an upgrade on what was needed. In Worcester here on College Avenue, not far from here, we had a building that was acquired by the land bank and restored and put back into good use. Another example in Worcester here on Larwell is a house that was acquired and brought back to productive tax-paying status. All right, let's go back to another subject that I touched on earlier and the mayor talked about, and that is our relative positioning in the county relative to the rest of the nation economically. As I stated earlier, we are on a remarkable roll here. Polycom is an organization that takes 23 economic statistics and factors those to look across 19 years for trends in all the metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas across the nation. And we are a micropolitan, one of 543. To be classed as one of these, you need 2 things. You need to have a city with a population of between 10,000 and 50,000 and at least 1 county. That's us. The rankings list, for example, Akron, not Summit County, even though that's the statistical area. People think of Worcester, they don't really think of Wayne County as much. So all these things are ranked by the biggest city in them. And it's interesting that here we're listed as Worcester, even though the statistical area is Wayne County. And so what you see on the screen here is a trend where for the last 10, 15, or 10, 11, or 12 years, we've been growing. We went from 167th, which is pretty good out of the 543, all the way up to 5th, 7th, 14th, and now this year again, 7th in the nation amongst all these micropolitans. That's something to celebrate and to work to continue. So let's go down to the county level and our finances for a few minutes. We have county tax revenues that go into the general fund, and I'm going to talk about that. It's shown a steady recovery from the deep decline we saw in 2008. And the county's sales tax rate at 0.75% is one of the lowest in our state. We are only among 4, maybe 5 other counties that have that low a tax rate. And yet it's been performing well. Last year, our general fund, which is the big ticket item in that is the sales tax revenue, grew 12%. And that was after a year of a couple % growth during the middle of the pandemic. So we can feel pretty fortunate about that. We've appropriated $34 million this year out of that general fund for operations, and over half of it goes into the criminal justice system, with the largest share being the sheriff, and he does run the jail out of that fund. But it also includes all our courts and the clerk of courts, the prosecutor, and the public defender, part of that justice system that we fund. Then in the all funds world, we've appropriated $183 million. We have over 100 funds that do many different things, but I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Our county engineer has his own revenue stream that comes from a share of the gas tax that we pay, as well as our licensing fees on our vehicles. And he has a separate fund that he operates out of to maintain our roads and do construction. Other examples would be, we have a capital improvement fund. The county home has a variety of revenue sources, but includes a levy that supports it. And the DD board has a large fund that's also supported by levies, as well as children's services as other examples. Now, there are a number of our operating funds. Some of them are enterprise funds that have a hard time staying in the black. This is true in most counties. Examples there would be our small wastewater treatment plants, the airport, and our dog shelter. And we've been faced with some fiscal challenges at our county home. In significant part, the COVID pandemic has really impacted our staff and our residents and the safety regulations that came along with those, some of which are still continuing. And there's trauma across the whole skilled nursing home industry. We know this. We have had to adjust our pay scales to compete for staff, and it's a pretty big challenge. We've also been needing to do maintenance. We have done roof repair and hallway flooring as examples of things that we're doing. And all this to say, we're going to need to renew our levy. We have a 5-year levy that's expiring. It's been level for quite a period of time at 0.7 of a mil. And of course, the effective rate of what it's actually generating has gone down over time. So we're asking for an increase to restore that to a healthy rate. And I think there's going to be a question on this. So let me just say that in sort of round numbers, you're paying about $17 per 100,000 of market value right now for the current levy. And that would go up another 17 if this passes. And of course, if you have a $200,000 house, you need to multiply 34 times 2 and so on to get to what it would actually cost you if that levy is successful for renewal and increase. All right, a little bit more positive note in some ways would be a big federal grant that has come our way, $22.3 million from the federal government under the American Rescue Plan, ARPA. This is one-time money, so we have to be very deliberate in not letting that impact our operating obligations, but rather use it for one-time expenditures that are important. And we have priorities, as you can imagine. I'm going to talk a little more about this, our justice system and the need to renovate our jail and expansion. I'll get on that a little bit more in a bit. And also we have rural wastewater system needs, some of which are many of our septic systems that are close to failing. And we'll get an EPA order soon, one of these days, to service those if we don't get ahead of it. So those are some examples of what we're looking to do with a fairly large amount of money. But I want to go into the criminal, yes, we have a deadline. December 26th of December, the end of December 2026, I'll get it right, is our deadline for spending out those funds. Now, the criminal justice system. We put together, and Adam's an example of this, I'm going to talk to him a little bit more in a bit. We brought the community together to do a strategic plan for our county on what can we do to make our criminal justice system work better and be more effective. It's a 3-year plan, and we are 1 year into that plan at the present time. It has 6 goals, and I'm not going to talk through all these. We actually did last year, and you had the captain at the jail come in and talk about them as well. So I'm not going to go into, I'm mostly going to focus on the first 2, alternatives to jail and renovating and expanding our county justice center, which is mainly the jail renovation. That's what I want to talk a little bit more about. So in goal 1, the question is, how do we fill gaps in alternatives to jail? That's a big question, and we've actually made some progress on this goal even before we set that as a goal. These are non-locked facilities that they're locked from the outside in, but not from the inside out. And that's very important when you're trying to fund these things. 180 has just a couple examples of their residential treatment facilities that have been put in place recently. There's also a campus out on the edge of town on the east side that has, you'll see the house you see there mainly is for men. It's a sober-minded house, and kind of behind that tree, you can barely see it, is a house for women as well. And then in the back of the same property, there's a motel, an old motel that was renovated and has 4 2-room units that are part of this recovery effort. And these are just examples of things, but we still have pretty big gaps in this arena that we're working on. We have a committee that is working on that issue. I want to emphasize something. it's important to have a place, but if you don't have the right program, the place isn't going to go well. And that is so important. So I'm emphasizing this as I talk to you here today about this. I've noticed over the years that the more effective the folks are the ones that actually have been through the difficulties and have come out with healing and success. And that's why I invited Adam to come here today. He is an example of someone who went through 180's recovery program and now is actually mentoring other individuals who are struggling. A lot of them are up in Portage County Jail, but he lives here in Worcester and he's doing some mentoring here as well. And this is a guy he was part of our whole planning process as a community participant. And I just brought him here as an example of the kind of folks that we need to grow more of as we try to bring people out of the situations. I don't think he was ever in the criminal justice system, right? But he did go through addiction recovery, and that's not an easy thing to get through. Deserves applause. Thank you. One thing I want to emphasize before I move on is, to be successful, we've got to move away from things that keep people stuck where they are and sort of enable them. And we've got to do more to help folks move up and become successful in the things that they're struggling with. So that's so important. Otherwise, our problems are going to just fester. And so I just want to emphasize that. All right, goal 2 is our jail renovation expansion. Might be running out of time here. I would like to get a few questions in if we can. But we are making good progress on goal 2. We have expecting over a $30 million cost to this project, so it's real money. The good news is we think now that we are able to fund this with a big chunk of the American Rescue Plan money that's available for things like this. And then we're going to also have money that we've been storing away in our capital fund. We're going to also possibly get a state grant, modest one, to help with this. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to borrow some more money to fill the gap to fund this. We're currently negotiating, there's at least one person in the room who knows a lot about this, for a construction manager at risk, which will have, that's a little different approach to construction where they'll work with our architect to get to a specific set of designs, set a ceiling for how much can be, the project can go, the risk goes to the contractor instead of to us. And then we'll go through the bidding and the contracting process. And we hope to start phase 1 yet this year with construction. That would be expansion of our current jail to add 48 beds and some specialty beds and booking and release areas connected to the current jail. That's phase 1. Phase 2 will then go in and do major renovation of the current jail to make it more dormitory style, which is expands its capacity, and also will renew the infrastructure to give longer life to that building. So that's phase 2. Here's that's an artist rendering of what the expansion part would look like. We're at the corner of Larwell and Walnut Street, looking at a rendering of what that building could look like. 3 floors is what's planned there. So that's an idea of what that could look like. We have another justice project that we actually completed last year, where we took the adult probation from the Common Police Court out of the basement of the courthouse on the square and built out a new space that was previously occupied by the law library. And it's a beautiful space. In the building that's actually attached to that used to be the Amstutz Frick building. It's part of the immediate downtown area. And it's a beautiful space. If you get a chance to go take a look at that, you'll appreciate it. And we did build out a new space for the law library in the lower level of our municipal court building, which is also a beautiful result. So those are some changes that have been going on there. A couple other things I want to mention. I think we're finally going to be ready to build a tower for the MARC system that's used for first responders and for other state agencies even that use that radio system when they're going to be in the Wayne County, Holmes County area. It'll benefit that area. The juvenile court over the last few years has been successful in really doing a lot less detention and more alternatives to that. But we aren't there yet. They're still working on trying to get stabilization for kids that are in crisis. And actually, we need that for adults as well. This is a serious problem, and our Goal 1 committee is being very focused on trying to find a good solution. There's some funds that are available, but I don't think actually getting that worked out has occurred yet. So there's an effort to make that happen. And then I want to talk about Goal 6 out of those 6 goals, which is prevention. That's a huge area. But one of the successful private ventures that's going on here in our county is led by Huddle, which has 600 or so kids being mentored now by about 300 volunteers. That's a large group, but there are still hundreds of students who could benefit from that kind of service. So it just happens that the leader of Huddle is also leading the team that's focused on prevention in Goal 6. So we're encouraged by that, and there's more work to be done there. Well, I could probably skip this slide since all 3 of us are in the room, but the question is, do we have time for questions? Maybe a few minutes.
I noticed in your presentation that they running for.
You're asking about the fairgrounds? Yes, thank you for that question, Steve. Let me explain how that works. The county actually owns the land. Actually, you should probably hand the mic over to Matt. he's the leader of that project. But the buildings and the operation is privately funded. It's an amazing, one of a kind, really. We're at the top of the heap of the 88 counties and having a wonderful fair. The county does help, I think, with liability insurance. And so there are some ways that we're partnered, but it's not primarily anything that reports to the commissioners. They have their own board, and their board is elected by we, the people that are in the ag community mainly, not the county commissioners. Good question. Thank you. Might get out a little early today.
Never a bad thing. Well, thank you, Ron. Appreciate it. We have the update from the city and the county, and in appreciation for your time with us today, we present you with a rendition of Rotary Wheel, which you know well since you've been a Rotarian for a long time. 4-way test on the back.
I'll post it in our office.
And they're made locally by students at the Village Network.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Well, as you all know, next week's our off campus. We're going to be up to college. We will be at Lowry. Lunch will be at 11:30, so we'll be starting a little early. There's plenty of parking. We put out numerous announcements. Lynn has sent them out. If you got any questions or need any help, we're here to make sure that you can come if you want to. Lynn tells me that we have a very good number of Rotarians already RSVP'd. So we're anticipating a nice group. Wayne will deliver comments to us right after lunch, and then we'll do tours. There will be no formal program other than touring Lowry Hall. So if you have any questions at all, let Lynn or I know, and we'll be glad to answer them for you. So this time, you guys have a safe week. We stand adjourned. Thank you.